Hey guys! So I just wanted to give you a follow-up video from the last one I just posted, which was how I choose my D-loop height. A lot of people were confused as to why this is important or really what it was changing. Saw a few questions asking why I don't just move my peep height, and obviously if they're asking that question, they don't understand the purpose. So I have Tate here and we are going to give you a visual of basically the benefit of this. Depending on where you pull on the string as far as the height goes, it's going to change which way the bow wants to point naturally. So Tate's going to demonstrate that for us because he's strong enough to hold the bow with one finger at full draw. So what I want you guys to watch is the bow height right here. So right now he's in the middle on the D loop. So now he's going to tip it where the bow will tip up. So he's going above the D loop. That would be raising your D loop. If you dropped your D loop right there, the bow tips down. So now go back to up. See the bow tip up? Perfect. So that is really what we're doing. You can see that it obviously changes the natural direction that the bow wants to point. Obviously with gravity, with the weight of the bow, with our fatigue, most people have an issue with the bow wanting to go out the bottom rather than floating out the top. So for me, I always start my D-loop height as low as I possibly can, and then I slowly start walking it up. That way I only have to test one direction. If you start in the middle, it's kind of hard to go up and then back down. So I start low, walk it high, knowing that as I walk up the string, the bow is going to point up more, which is really going to help counteract gravity and those dip bangs out the bottom. So thanks, Tate, for the demo. I got a few more questions to answer. So a few other questions that people had were, one, do I use the center ties? And if you actually listened to the whole video, I did explain to you that yes, I use the center ties and how I tie those in. But some people, again, were asking why those were important. So one, it's going to alleviate knock pinch. So I would highly recommend that everybody always use at least a lower tie underneath your knock. If you don't, you're going to get bad knock pinch, and often you'll see your arrow lift as you draw back off of the rest. You do not want that. So tying those center ties in is a really smart thing. Tying above is optional. I choose to tie above just because if you look at when you tie a D-loop, it's not the same height as it comes around the string, and so it usually touches one knock ear and doesn't touch the other knock ear. And having a gap on one knock ear and it touch the other drives me crazy. So I do choose to tie below and above, but that's up to you. Obviously, you can't do those ties when you're doing that test. The test is simply where to choose where to tie that in. So once I choose the height, then I just set the bow in the bow press, I loosen the D-loop, I pull it down, I tie the lower tie, I have it put an arrow in, right? Tie the tie right against the bottom of the knock, then I can push the D-loop back up, loosen the top D-loop, push it up, tie the top tie in, and push it back. One of the reasons that I really like having both ties in there is if something happens and I have to end up changing my D-loop, I know what length my D-loops always are and what I cut them to. And so I can take the D-loop off and then re-put one on, knowing that it's going back on in the exact same spot because my center ties are staying on the string. So it's also just nice to be able to have that if anything happens to go wrong. So one of the other really big questions is, when are you tuning? Or is this part of tuning? And no, this has nothing to do with tuning the bow. This is solely choosing how you want the bow to aim, essentially. So this comes before tuning. This is one of the first steps that you're going to do. You don't want to tune until you've chosen your D-loop height and tied in your center ties, so your D-loop is tied in correctly with how it's going to be finished product. Then you can tune. But I want to add, I have so many more steps that come to aiming before I really ever worry about tuning. So what I may do once I get that tied in is either shoot an arrow through paper or shoot a bare shaft just to make sure that it's not wildly wrong. Usually I can eyeball it pretty close and I'm good with that. Just to make sure that for the next week, I'm not shooting like plowing my rest or something like that. But for me, I might spend anywhere from 2 days to 2 weeks only working on aiming, because there's no sense in going to tune if I end up deciding that for whatever reason I just can't get this bow to aim good enough to play ball for me. If that's the case, I'm not going to shoot this bow. And so here's a few things that I do when it comes to aim. So first thing is draw length. I will set the bow at a rough draw length that's close to me. So to set this last one up, all I did was just draw my other bow back in a draw board that I've been shooting, mark an arrow, and I started this bow at that draw length because I know that's going to be relatively close. If I wanted to make a big draw length change during testing, I might put 3 twists in the string to shorten the draw length and then put it back and then take 3 twists out of the string. So anything that I test, I always test both directions. I'll try shorter and then I'll try longer. If I wanted to try a little bit smaller draw length change, I would go 1.5 twists in and then back to center, 1.5 twists out. Keep in mind, if you do that, usually your peep lands perfectly backwards. Then you have to pull the peep out of the string and flip it around, so that can kind of be a pain, but well worth it for the testing process. Once those bigger adjustments are done and I get to smaller adjustments, then it's simple stuff like put 1/2 twist in both cables. Yes, if there's not the exact same amount of twists in each cable, it will change your timing a little bit, but the next step of this is timing. So I will start with my cams timed even, where both stops are hitting the cables at the same time, and then I will usually test it 1/2 twist, 1 twist, and 1.5 twists with the top hitting first. Then I'll set it back to even, and then I'll go 1/2, 1.5 twist with the bottom stop hitting first. For me, what seems to aim better on the Bowtech Gen 2s is the bottom hitting first. Usually I end up about 1 twist ahead. If you're gonna try a 1.5 twists, you're gonna have to pull like a man. Like if you aren't pulling really, really hard in your back wall, you are not gonna be touching both stops, or you're gonna leak pressure, and the top stop or the bottom, whichever one is behind, will come off the cable at full draw. So if you're gonna do 1.5, make sure that you're pulling really hard. That's not for most people. But the timing will drastically change how the bow aims as well. And so what I've found for me personally, having the bottom hit ahead really feels like the bow wants to tip up even more than the D-loop test, and helps a little bit with the down bobs, because that's usually what I'm trying to get out of my sight picture. And so I will also play with the tiller. So the tiller is also essentially changing your D-loop height as you're changing your tiller, and I will test that top in and top out, bottom in, bottom out. I'll test that all the different ways as well. And so when I set a bow up, I pick the D-loop height, I tie my center ties in, I still have probably days worth of aiming work that I'm going to do. And it's not really in any particular order, because every single thing that I said, like if you play with your timing, that changes your draw length. A lot of times, depending on how you change your draw length, it can change your timing. If you change your tiller, therefore your poundage, it also changes your draw length. So all of those things are all kind of codependent on one another. So when you change one, you often change something else. And so I will spend days walking those back and forth and testing all those different things until I find the perfect combination for me. And what I'm looking for in a sight picture is something that I'm comfortable with, right? It's going to be different for everybody. So telling you what I expect, I mean, some of you might aim way better than me and some of you might aim way worse. So the goal is not to aim like me. The goal is to aim the best that you can aim for yourself. So I'm doing this now at 20 yards on a Vegas face, and I'm seeing, okay, how often is my pin in the 10 versus the 9? How many times in an aiming cycle does it potentially go to the 9? What directions is it going if I leave the 10? Can I keep it in the 10 all the time? Like, all those are questions that I'm asking myself as I'm working through this aiming. So once I go through all of those aiming steps and I have the bow where I want, then I move on to tuning. So like I said, it's not a bad thing if you guys want to just shoot it through paper, shoot a bare shaft, and get the tune close if you can't eyeball it close enough. It is worth doing that, because who wants to shoot a bow for a week if you're just plowing your rest blade or whatever, right? Like, but it doesn't have to be perfect. Don't put loads of time into it. Don't worry about it, because we are going to get to that after we're done with the aiming. So I think that covers most of the questions. If I missed anything, let me know. I'm happy to make another video answering any more questions that you guys have. As I'm doing bow build stuff, I will keep walking you through it. Honestly, I've been doing some of the different draw length stuff, and this bow just aimed really, really good out of the gate. So I haven't had to do loads of work on it. So I'm pretty much getting to the point that I'm probably gonna move on to tuning, which is really fast for me in the process. But thank you guys. If you have any other questions, let me know. I'm happy to help. I hope everybody's having a good indoor season.